Hey guys, welcome to Film My Watch List. I'm Richard Keeney, your host. Today I just want to do a bit of a roundup of all the films that came out in January that I didn't get a chance to properly review. You may have seen already that myself and Dave uploaded a podcast review of 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri last night. We go really in depth and analyze the film. If you want to check it out, you can see the link below, and I'll link it at the end of the video. As well as that, we reviewed All the Money in the World about 2 weeks ago. Apologies for some of the videos being a bit spaced out in time. I'm going to be a lot more frequent now because I finally got some editing software sorted out. There was a lot of films that I saw this month. January is the best month for films in Ireland. I know this is in stark contrast to the States, which some people say January is the worst month for films after having the award season in October, November, December. But we tend to get our Oscar nominees and Golden Globe nominees from January and February. So while I still haven't seen Loveless, Shape of Water, Phantom Thread, or Lady Bird, or I, Tonya, I saw some great films this month. Shape of Water we're going to see next Tuesday, myself, Dave and Cynthia, and there should be a podcast coming your way about that film as well. I'm going to do a video on all the Oscar nominations, particularly the Best Picture nominees, and ranking them and telling you what I thought of those 9. Maybe should have been 10. We'll get into that. So, to begin with, earlier on in the month I saw a film called Song of Granite, directed by Pat Collins. Song of Granite is a really poetic and simple story set in the west coast of Ireland, in Connemara. Some people might know it's quite famous. Countryside, full of mountains and kind of vast terrain, in County Galway in the west of Ireland. The story follows a Shannog singer, a traditional Irish singer, in the early 20th century leading up to about the 50s and 60s. It's quite a simple story. It's really beautiful, shot in monochrome, mostly Ascailga in Irish, so it's subtitled in English below, except for the frequent music that the singer is singing in most of his scenes, as he's a Shannog singer. He sings Ascailga, he sings in Irish, but it's not subtitled, and that really adds to the overall atmosphere of the film and the experience. It's really intoxicating. It's got this really lovely atmosphere that kind of builds. The director, Pat Collins, made a film called Silence. I still haven't seen it. I have it on DVD here. I must watch it. This is probably one of his biggest so far. Song of Granite was actually the official foreign language Oscar submission for Ireland. Didn't get shortlisted, but I'd love to see more Irish films aiming to get into that market of non-English films. It's a real niche that we could totally take advantage of, and there's always a lot of funding for filmmakers that want to make films in Irish. So yeah, beautiful film. It has this weird kind of documentary / biopic kind of genre blend. Really stunning cinematography in Connemara of the mountains and the rivers, and some just beautiful poetry visually and even lyrically in singer Joe Heaney's performances. There's some really fascinating commentary on whether his fame led him to be a abusive husband, neglectful father, abusive emotionally anyway, where he moved to Scotland and he kind of left a family behind to go off to the States, and he became really big in the era, like in the 60s, when the Clancy brothers were becoming huge, and he was touring the States with his music. And though he's not a perfect person, he's a fascinating character. The way it's shot is just so immersive, to the point where you feel like you're watching a documentary, but it's just all recreation, and it's so fly on the wall. And like the stuff in New York, I think it was shot up in Calgary. It was somewhere in Canada. But it's authentic, and yeah, really, really beautiful film. If you get a chance, seek out Song of Granite. It might be getting a wider release, maybe in the States, in the future, but yeah, beautiful film. I would give it 4.5 out of 5. Next up, we have Brad Status, directed by Mike White, starring Ben Stiller. It also has some small cameos from Luke Wilson. Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords is in there. There's Michael Sheen and Jenna Fisher, who played Pam in The Office. It really surprised me. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, and it looks, if you look at the poster, it just looks like this standard little indie kind of drama about like a father and son relationship. The son's going to college, and Ben Stiller, who plays his father, is showing him around Boston, showing him to his old campus, and his son has the potential to be going to Harvard, which kind of irks Ben Stiller's character slightly. And seems like run-of-the-mill from that. What elevates it beyond that is Ben Stiller's performance is brilliant, and he has this great voiceover narration that really gives you this insight into the little quirks of his character. So Brad's status, you could notice by the title, it's heavily focused on Brad, who Ben Stiller plays, his idea of himself. It's hugely relevant to the way that we live on social media nowadays, and how if you see your friends posting something, it's always a highlight of their life. They're never gonna post something that's negative. So taking that aspect of society, Brad is supremely insecure about his life and his status. He works for this non-profit charity, but when he looks at all of his friends that he went to college with, all he can see is success for them and failure for him. Michael Sheen plays a novelist who's always on CNN as a guest host. You have Luke Wilson's character is a powerful CEO. Jermaine Clement is a playboy who is retired in Hawaii and has women hanging off his arm, like drugs constantly, living the life, surfing. By contrast, Brad can just see himself as failing. In his eyes, his son is he's blossoming into a man, and Brad feels like his life is declining. So it's this really funny insecurity that all men have but don't really show. And by showing the insight of his narration, and the narration works so well, it's not just narration for narration's sake, it informs our idea of the character so much, and there's so many comedic moments that are drawn from his voiceover. We have some amazing moments where we know exactly what he's thinking, and then based off his thoughts he'll interact with a character like his son or his wife, and they'll be completely blindsided by this kind of impulsive kind of change of character. We see it coming, but it's absolutely hilarious the way that it feeds into his real life, and it really shows how silly some of his thoughts are. One of my favorite things of the film is, like the poster, you can easily kind of write it off as a standard indie comedy. There's so many moments of character that seem like they're going to go for cliche, or they're going to go for the standard narrative of what a character would do. There's a moment in the film, without giving too much away, where Ben Stiller's character goes for drinks with his son's friends, female friends, and it's definitely clever writing and filmmaking on the part of Mike White that he is trying to make you think, oh no, where's this going to go? Is he going to go sleep with the son's girlfriend, or is he going to make a fool of himself? And it never goes quite there. There's uncomfortable moments, but they take it and they'll go in a completely different direction. It's a really original film in some senses, and some really beautiful moments. It really cleverly navigates comedy, like awkward comedy, with kind of profound drama. And yeah, it has a lot to say about masculinity in the process. I would give Brad's status 4 stars out of 5. Next up we have Hostiles, a new western by Scott Cooper, director of Out of the Furnace. He made Crazy Heart that Jeff Bridges won his Oscar for. It stars Christian Bale, Rosamund Pike, Timothy Chalamet from Call Me By Your Name is in there, who's actually an Oscar nominee now. Jesse Plemons is in it. I really enjoyed Hostiles. It's really atmospheric. It's a slow, old-fashioned western, and while I can see some people might find it boring, I had a really good time with it. I don't know if I'd call it cliche. It definitely takes some tropes of the western genre and plays with them, but I feel like it does some interesting stuff there as well. The depiction of Native Americans is really refreshing, because the way it starts out, you feel like it's going to be, you know, cowboys versus Indians, kind of like the Indians as the antagonist, and which would be quite problematic nowadays. But there's so much grey area. The film initiates when Christian Bale's army captain character is ordered to escort a Cheyenne chief who he has a pass with, and the chief's family through dangerous terrain because they're going to release them. He of course has some problems with this because there's a violent past between him and this chief, but he reluctantly agrees after some coercion. It's his last job before retirement, but it works very well. Of course there's the predictable elements, such as you know that the captain and the chief will eventually reconcile in some way, or at least have some begrudging respect for one another by the end of the film. But the way it gets there is quite it's evocative, and it's really atmospheric. Some beautiful shots of like the old West. It's just, and it's set in this time period where things are like slowly but surely changing for America. So the outlaws that once were thriving in this area are kind of characters of a bygone age. They can't really fit into society anymore in a country that is becoming more and more civilized. There's some great moments of violence, like attacks by tribes of Native Americans against civilians, and vice versa. There's some interesting like horseback fights with shotguns and stuff. Rosamund Pike is very good. There's one or two moments that I thought she overacted slightly, but that was more of a directing choice by Scott Cooper, I think. Maybe letting some scenes go on a bit longer than they needed to. Christian Bale is a powerhouse in this film. He's really, really impressive. He has this kind of quiet intensity that he does so well, and he's bulked up Christian, not skinny as a rake from The Fighter or Machinist, and not fat as Dick Cheney as he soon will be, but he's just maybe slightly bigger than Bruce Wayne. Yeah, he's very good. I would describe it as Dirty Facial Hair the movie. There's so much filthy beards and mustaches just like hanging over lips. Like if you look at a picture of Christian Bale in the movie, he has this huge tash, just like kind of goes down to his chin almost. It's disgusting, but it's really authentic, and it totally sells the character. I love Christian Bale in this. He has a great arc, and by the end there's a really nice ending where you're expecting something to happen and it kind of goes another way. It's quite satisfying. Yeah, overall I would definitely recommend Hostiles. Really great Western. It's taking 21st century values, placing them in the Old West, but not just for the sake of it. Definitely one of the best Westerns I've seen in a while. Not quite as good as Slow West with Michael Fassbender. I absolutely love that film. But it has this kind of Sergio Leone, maybe like John Ford kind of style to it. Yeah, definitely check it out. I would give Hostiles 3.5 out of 5. Next I'm going to talk to you about Molly's Game. First-time director Aaron Sorkin, the famous Oscar winner, writer behind Social Network, The West Wing, A Few Good Men, Steve Jobs, Moneyball. He's a great writer. And this is the first time that he's directed one of the films that he has written. Now, I had some kind of concerns about what his direction was going to be like beforehand, but it's very assured. It's really vibrant and kind of, it's got this unique like blend of kind of humor in the way that he shoots things. He'll have like these weird cutaways. Jessica Chastain is fantastic in the lead role. Hello, Barry. You want to come up here? Ta-da! Jessica Chastain's brilliant in the lead role. She plays the eponymous Molly, who is a former Olympic hopeful skier who suffers a bad accident and tries to make it in LA. So she's trying to get some money before she goes to law school. In the process of which she falls into this high stakes poker game. A character notices her while she's working as a barmaid for tips and sees that she's likable and just gives her a chance to run a poker game. Now this is all a true story. She gets in way over her head. She's working with these celebrities and CEOs that are betting crazy money, and eventually starts up her own game because she becomes an expert at it. And that's before she gets involved with the Russian mob, and then it's cutting back and forth between the beginning of this career of hers and her legal troubles in the future. And Idris Elba plays her lawyer. Idris Elba's really good in it. Idris Elba is a fantastic actor, and I love him in The Wire. I love him in Luther. I haven't seen so many films that I've been impressed by his acting in. He tends to get into some dodgy blockbusters. I know he's supposed to be great in Beast of No Nation. I still haven't seen that, but I saw The Mountain Between Us last year in the winter with Kate Winslet, and it was one of the worst films I've seen in ages, like terribly dull. So I was a bit hesitant about what his performance would be like, but he was really great. He has this great monologue, really great Sorkin, typical Sorkin monologue towards the end of the film that really solidifies his performance. Kevin Costner has a role as Jessica Chastain's father. He's quite good. He has one scene in it that's a bit contrived, but that was more on the writing side of things. All in all, I think Sorkin did a really good job of directing his first film. It's a bit scattershot visually at some points. He seems to be going for some like style over substance in parts, It's very well written. It's a really good script, Oscar nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, but he hasn't really developed his style quite yet. There's some moments that are quite jarring because they don't really match with the rest of the film, and if you see it, you'll see what I mean. Just some visuals that are kind of out of place. It is very competently directed otherwise, but it's just, he doesn't seem to have the cinematic language quite yet of how to compose a scene to really sell his shots. Like if you compare this to the likes of Social Network with David Fincher, who's a masterful director, or even Danny Boyle's Steve Jobs, you can see how a great director can turn Sorkin's screenplays into amazing, vibrant films. And Molly's Game is very good, but it's just not quite up there with the likes of other films of his that he's written for other directors. It's definitely worth a watch though. I did not think it would be as good as it was. It's really enjoyable, maybe overlong. I think Sorkin could have probably cut his film down to maybe like 1 hour and 40 minutes. It's like a bit over 2 hours, which is a lot for mostly dialogue driven film. There's just, you know, constant arguments, the kind of typical Sorkin war with words kind of film. I give it 3.5 out of 5.